Hi, this is Chapter 3C and in Oracle. So to get started, what we're really doing with this, Chapter 3C really covers um, creating queries from and querying multiple tables. In 3B, we queried information from a single table. In 3C, we query information from multiple tables, and that's really a much more real-life sort of scenario. So let's see. As I mentioned before a little bit, we have Cartesian product sorts of issues. Now you have to develop your query correctly in order to not get a Cartesian product. A Cartesian product is when you have, if you're looking at faculty and students, where you have a student and each individual student is grouped with every single faculty member. And then, so the first student is grouped with 5 or 6 faculty, the second student is grouped with 5 or 6 faculty, those same 5 or 6 faculty, and so on. Probably what you're looking for in this case is a student and their advisor, but if you don't develop the query correctly, you'll get this Cartesian product, which groups everything with everything else. So an example of that is select SID student.FID table.field faculty.FID table.field and FLAST from student and faculty. Now I just want to point this out initially because we don't have any joining statements, and we'll talk about joining in just a minute. So I'm going to go into SQL and select that and run that command, and we can see that JO100 is, and every single student is tied to or listed with marks. Every single student is listed with a Julin, and so on. Now, in order to fix that, what we have to do is develop our query correctly. So where we have the same set of information, SID, SLAST, and again table.field and FLAST from student faculty, but we have to tie the primary key to the foreign key. And so we do that by saying which table.field equals which table.field from the first table to the second table. So I'm just going to grab this, copy it, paste it, and that's really what we're looking for, the student with the faculty advisor. Okay, with that said, we have to talk about how do we join these tables. Okay, so basically we have, within this query, we have a select what? Well, we want to select course number and grade in this example. From where? Well, now if we take a look at course number and grade, we have to go through, we really have to go through, we would probably want to say what student is involved to, or what student is applicable. So in order to find the student, we need to use the student table. We need to use the enrollment table. We need to use the course section table in order to go ahead and I guess the course table as well to get this information. Because if we want the course number is here and the grade is in enrollment right there. So we have to go, and we probably want the student whose grade is listed in the particular course. So we have to use all these tables. That means that we have to include in the from, which tables does this information come from? Which tables do we have to hit in order to be able to, or join, in order to be able to get this information? So we need student, we need enrollment, we need course section, and we need course. Student, from enrollment, from course section, from course. Now you have to join these together, and typically this join is simply where you are tying the primary key of one table to a foreign key of the next. So we start out with where student.sid table.field equals enrollment.sid. These two are tied together. Enrollment.sid and enrollment.csectionid is tied to course section.csectionid. And, okay, the next piece, and what is it? Course section.course number, that's actually supposed to be number, that's one of those goofy things about this text, course underscore NO should be tied to course number over here. I'm not sure about, that's a goofy part of this. We'll go through that and clarify better. The point is, we tie all of these together. We use these where, and statements to do so. And then finally, what is the actual search condition? We want to find the grade for S last equals Jones, S first equals Tammy. So that's why we need to tie the student table into that, because we're querying based upon a student. Okay, so that's what that structure looks like. Remember, select what, and this are the fields that you want to list. From where, these are the tables that you need to hit within this search. And then where, how do you tie these tables together? Where, the first join condition, and the second join condition, and the third join condition. And finally, what are you looking for specifically? Now, these are called inner joins. This is called an inner join. There's some other kinds of joins I'll just briefly touch on or basically just point out in this video. We'll primarily use inner joins. There's nothing wrong with using any join that works in any way. I mean, as long as it works, that's perfect. Now, with that said, though, I think using inner joins helps us at this point understand those basic mechanics much better than maybe a natural join, for instance. So what we want to do, inner joins are very simple. They and these are, remember, these are joins joining table to table to table. Values in one table equals values in another, so it's an apples to apples comparison. You have to join, or you have to use customer.cid, and you have to tie that to orders.cid, because it has to be apples for apples. Where you get into problems and weird and goofy data being given to you is where you join CID from customer to maybe OID for orders. It is not the same kind of information as apples and oranges. So remember, CID with one has to tie to CID with another. OID from orders has to tie to OID to order line. It has to be apples for apples. We're selecting SID, S last, S first, and then student.FID. Interesting point. So if we have two tables and they have the same FID field in it, and student and faculty do, you have to tell Oracle which table you're grabbing this FID from. Otherwise, you're going to get an ambiguous error. Okay, so we're going to grab this from student and faculty. Now, how do you tie these together? Where student FID equals faculty FID. Okay, now, what you can do, though, is at this point, just for clarity, you can say table.field throughout, and at this point that might be a little bit easier to understand where this data is coming from when you're looking at multiple tables. With that said, as long as there's a unique field within this selection, you don't have to specify which table information is coming from. So if we grab this, you should be able to paste that. And again, the formatting doesn't matter. I don't care about trimming. I don't care about all those things at this point in time. This information will probably be pulled into a GUI that's already formatted out anyway, so you can see what we get there. Now let me bring up that command once again, and I'm going to change and just say that instead of student.fid that we have just FID. The next line will be from student and faculty. The next line is where student FID equals faculty FID. Column ambiguously defined. This column is in student, this column is in faculty. You have to tell it which table you're grabbing that information from. And as in this case. Okay, now let's take this example. Same thing, same output, but now you're just identifying which table and field every single piece of information comes from. Okay, now the other deal, which customer, so the question might be, which customer placed order number 1 and what was on the order? Okay, again, we have a selection, we have, with the inner joins, we have a selection, we have a from which tables, and then we have our join conditions, and then the actual query condition. And there's a couple of parts of this actually. So, and it doesn't matter, these don't have to be in any particular order, but they should be just from a troubleshooting perspective. So you want to select last orders.oid because there's an orders OID in both orders and order line. Item description comes from here. OL quantity comes from there. How many did you order? From which tables? Order line, from inventory, from item, from orders, and from customer. How do you tie these together? Well, first of all, where item ID is tied to inventory.item ID, and inventory.inv.id is tied to orderline.inv.id, remember, apples to apples, and orderline.oid is 1, because orderline.oid, we're saying which customer placed order number 1. Now we need to find out and tie together the order to the customer piece. So, and customer.cid equals orders.cid, and again, orders.oid will then equal 1. So that'll give us the answer to that question. Now let's go ahead and grab this. I may have to re-edit that just a little bit. Let's see. There we go. So when I copied and pasted it and right-clicked into the SQL command line, we get Graham ordered on order number 1, a 3-season tent, and the quantity was 1. On order number 1, he ordered women's fleece pullover and 2 of those. And again, that question was which customer placed order number 1 and what was on the order. So that returns that information. That's a natural join. That's basically the steps you use to create this and do this. Some other kinds of joins. An inner join returns rows only if values exist in all tables. An outer join returns all rows from one table and returns matching records from another. The example might be with this, and it's a little hard to see, if we want to list all the customers and all of the orders and figure out who hasn't made an order. In this case, James hasn't made an order because there's no corresponding OID with it. And again, I'll just touch on this. We'll talk about it more in class. Natural joins, if there is where the tables have a single commonly named and defined column, you can use the keywords to join the tables in the from clause of the select statement. So in this case, you can select SID, S last, S first, FID, and F last from student, natural join faculty. So that's saying it's finding that common field and joining the two together based upon that common field. And that's great. That works fine. I think that if that works, that's kind of what you see within in Access when you create Access queries and you look at the SQL button, the SQL tab for the Access query, you'll find natural joins within that, and that works perfectly fine. I would like you to use probably these inner joins like this during our class, simply to understand the mechanics a little bit better. What ties to what and where. Okay, we have natural join, and then we have a union, and this is a little odd, but it's okay. Say if we're building a phone record, a phone book if you will, what we can do is select S last, S first, and S phone from student, and then grab the same sort of information from faculty. And what that'll do is just build a list of under last names, first names, and phone numbers. Now what you'll see listed is S last and S first. That's because that's the first query. If I were to select F, the faculty information first, it would be, the headings would be F last and F first. Okay, so I think at that point we'll go ahead and we've talked about what a Cartesian product is. Inner joins, more specifically, we've taken a look at the structure and how an inner join works, and then we've also just touched on outer joins and natural joints and unions. So thank you.